Introduction. Have you ever walked away from a conversation, replaying every word in your head, wondering why you got so defensive or why you couldn't just stay calm? Or found yourself spiraling emotionally over something small, a missed text, a careless comment, an unexpected delay? You're not alone. In a world that constantly demands our attention, tests our patience, and pokes at our insecurities, controlling our emotions can feel like wrestling the wind. Yet, mastering your emotions isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about learning to respond rather than react. It's about showing up with strength instead of being swept away by every internal storm. Most of us were never taught how to deal with emotions beyond vague advice like just calm down or don't take it personally. But those phrases only scratch the surface of a much deeper human experience. Emotions are not enemies to be silenced. They are signals, vital, rich, and informative. When we ignore them, they control us. When we understand them, they empower us. Whether you're a parent trying to remain patient, a professional navigating pressure, a student overwhelmed by uncertainty, or someone simply tired of being at the mercy of your moods, this journey is for you. Day-to-day life isn't always a battlefield, but it's certainly full of moments where you either rise or sink based on how well you handle what you feel. By the time you finish this book, you'll begin to see emotions not as something to fear or suppress, but as energy to channel. You'll know how to breathe through conflict, ground yourself during chaos, and carry your calm wherever you go. This isn't about perfection. It's about practice. Not about never feeling anger, sadness, or fear, but knowing how to let those emotions flow without letting them flood your life. Welcome to the beginning of emotional control, not just as a skill, but as a lifestyle. Chapter 1. Understanding your emotional blueprint. Before you can ever hope to control your emotions, you must first understand them. Like any powerful force, emotions must be studied, acknowledged, and respected. They are not random intrusions into your day, but deeply embedded systems that have evolved to help you survive, connect, and make sense of the world around you. Emotions are not the enemy. In fact, they are among your most loyal messengers. Fear alerts you to danger. Anger signals that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness reflects a sense of loss, helping you process change. Joy, gratitude, and love bind you to people and moments that give life its richness. Each emotion, whether pleasant or painful, carries vital information. When ignored or misunderstood, these signals don't vanish. They grow louder, often showing up as stress, burnout, anxiety, or impulsive behavior. Learning to understand them is not weakness. It is one of the most important forms of strength. Every person carries a unique, emotional blueprint. This blueprint is formed through a blend of nature and nurture. Your genetics may predispose you to certain emotional sensitivities, but your upbringing, cultural background, life experiences, and environment all play a critical role in how you feel and respond to different situations. A child raised in a home where emotions were repressed may grow up fearing emotional vulnerability. Someone who is often shamed for crying may learn to numb their feelings, appearing stoic on the outside while chaos brews within. You must come to terms with the fact that not all of your emotional reactions are truly about the present moment. Sometimes they are echoes, emotional leftovers from past experiences that were never fully processed. That feeling of panic when someone raises their voice might not be about this person or this moment. It could be your nervous system remembering a childhood of being scolded or misunderstood. That overwhelming frustration when plans change could reflect an inner struggle for control rooted in past instability. The truth is, until you pause and examine what you're feeling and why, you'll continue to respond based on habit, not intention. Understanding your emotional blueprint also means learning the difference between emotions, feelings, and moods. Emotions are short-lived, intense reactions to stimuli, internal or external. You might feel a rush of anger if someone cuts in front of you in traffic. Feelings are the conscious experience of those emotions, your interpretation of that rush. Moods, however, are more sustained and less clearly linked to a specific cause. A bad mood might linger all day without you really knowing why. The better you become at identifying where you are on this emotional spectrum, the more control you'll gain. Naming what you feel is a surprisingly powerful first step. When you can say, "I feel irritated," instead of just snapping at someone, you're already beginning to interrupt the emotional loop. The modern world, unfortunately, doesn't make this journey easier. We live in an age of constant stimulation and emotional bombardment. Notifications, news cycles, social comparisons, and digital feedback loops that tug at our feelings all day long. It's easy to become reactive, oversensitive, or numb. Your nervous system, especially if constantly stressed, can remain stuck in fight or flight mode, making even small triggers feel overwhelming. That's why emotional self-awareness is more than self-help talk. It's a survival skill. To begin this journey of control, you need to start observing your emotional patterns, not judging them, not shaming yourself for having them, but noticing them like a curious investigator. What situations consistently cause you stress? Which people make you feel drained or defensive? What thoughts tend to spiral into anxiety or frustration? Often, emotions follow a pattern, and patterns can be changed, but only if they're first noticed. Becoming more emotionally aware won't happen overnight, but it will happen faster the more honest you are with yourself. If you can start checking in with your emotions daily, asking yourself what you feel, why you might feel that way, and what you need, you will begin to build the foundation of emotional control. It's not about bottling emotions up or pretending to be positive all the time. It's about choosing how you experience and express your emotions, rather than being ruled by them. Your emotional blueprint isn't fixed. It can be reworked, updated, improved. You can learn new ways to interpret emotional data, to shift automatic reactions into thoughtful responses. You can begin to live less at the mercy of your moods and more in alignment with your true values. Understanding your emotional blueprint is like finding the owner's manual for your inner world. Without it, you move through life guessing, reacting to situations based on impulse, suppressing what you feel to please others, or losing control at the worst possible times. But when you begin to see emotions not as random waves, but as patterns with purpose, a shift happens. You begin to feel less like a prisoner of your emotions and more like the observer, the conductor, the one in charge. Think about how much your emotions influence your choices on a daily basis. You decide what to say, who to avoid, what to eat, and even whether to try again or give up, all based on how you feel in that moment. That's the quiet but immense power of emotion. When left unchecked, it can quietly sabotage your goals, your peace, and your relationships. But when guided and understood, it becomes a force for clarity, courage, and meaningful action. Many people believe that controlling emotions means not feeling them at all, that to be emotionally strong means to be cold, detached, and unaffected. This is a dangerous myth. Emotional control isn't about silencing your humanity. It's about regulating your reactions in a way that serves you rather than harms you. It's not about building a wall, but learning how to hold what you feel without letting it flood your mind or dictate your behavior. You can be deeply emotional and still be deeply grounded. That's the balance this book will help you reach. But before control comes acceptance. That's the deeper work of this chapter, embracing your emotional nature without shame. If you've been taught that crying is weak, or that anger makes you a bad person, or that sensitivity is a flaw, then it's time to rewrite that narrative. Emotions don't make you fragile. Denying them does. Some of the most resilient people in the world are those who have learned to face their emotions with honesty and grace, not those who pretend they don't have any. This journey requires compassion toward yourself. There will be moments of reflection that may feel uncomfortable. Times when you realize you've been reacting from pain, fear, or past wounds rather than from the present. That's not failure. That's awareness. And awareness is your first real step to freedom. In learning your emotional blueprint, you also begin to see that not all emotions are yours alone. You absorb the emotions of those around you, especially if you're sensitive or empathetic by nature. This emotional residue can confuse you, leaving you unsure if you're feeling your own frustration or someone else's. Emotional clarity means learning where your emotional boundaries are. It means noticing when you've picked up someone else's storm and making the choice to let it go. As you go through your day from now on, start tuning in. When you get irritated, ask yourself why. When you feel anxious, pause and explore what triggered that state. Don't rush past your emotions. Don't numb them with noise, screens, food, or endless distractions. Sit with them. Listen. Begin to notice what your emotions are trying to teach you about your needs, your limits, and your values. Because that's the secret. Emotions don't just stir. They reveal. They point to what matters most. Emotional intelligence begins not with controlling others, or even controlling circumstances, but with controlling how you process what life throws at you. The better you understand the map of your emotions, the more easily you can navigate the highs and lows of life without being capsized. This first chapter is your foundation. It asks you to become aware, to become curious, and most of all, to become honest with yourself. You don't need to fix every emotional reaction overnight. You only need to start paying attention. Your emotional blueprint is not a limitation. It's a compass. And from this point forward, you'll begin to learn how to read it. Everything that follows in this book builds upon what you now know. Emotions are signals, not threats. They're tools, not traps. When understood, they become a quiet strength beneath your decisions, a steady rhythm in your relationships, and a powerful light in moments that would otherwise overwhelm you. Chapter 2. The Pause Principle. Respond, don't react. There's a moment, brief but powerful, that exists between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. It's often so small that we miss it entirely. Something is said. Something unexpected occurs. Someone pushes your buttons. And before you even realize it, you're reacting. Your tone sharpens, your heart races, your thoughts scramble to defend or retreat or lash out. Later, you might regret it. You might wonder why you lost control or why you let a passing moment define your entire mood. This chapter is about claiming that invisible space and learning how to stretch it wide enough to make a conscious choice. That space is where emotional control is born. Most emotional outbursts aren't rooted in the present. They're echoes of habits formed long ago. You may react to criticism not because of what's being said now, but because of how you were spoken to as a child. You might snap at a partner or colleague because your stress has been simmering all day, looking for a place to boil over. When you don't pause, you become a slave to reflex, driven by impulse instead of intention. And the cost is high. Unchecked reactions damage relationships, derail progress, and often leave you feeling more out of control than ever before. But here's the truth. Every emotional reaction can be interrupted, not suppressed, not ignored, but interrupted long enough to shift from reaction to response. That interruption is called the pause. The pause doesn't have to be long. Sometimes it's as simple as a breath, a single, deep inhale that allows your nervous system to calm, your heart rate to slow, and your mind to catch up with your emotions. Other times, it means saying, "Can we talk about this later?" Or giving yourself a few minutes alone to process what just happened. The point of the pause is not to avoid emotion, but to redirect it through awareness. When you pause, you're not denying what you feel. You're acknowledging that your emotions deserve to be processed, not projected. Learning to pause is like building a muscle. At first, you may not even realize you had the option. You'll still react. You'll still say things you didn't mean or take things too personally. But the more you practice awareness in the heat of the moment, the more you train your brain to delay that instinctive reaction. That's where real emotional power lies. Not in being unshakable, but in being able to notice your internal storm without letting it sweep you away. The body plays a central role in this process. Your emotional reactions often begin in your nervous system before they even reach your conscious mind. Your muscles tense, your breath shortens, your voice changes. That's why the first step to pausing is almost always physical. Ground yourself. Feel your feet. Breathe in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. You are not at war. You are simply choosing a better path through this moment. The pause is not always easy. When emotions run high, your brain's amygdala, responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze response, can hijack your rational mind. That's why in the heat of an argument, you might say something that shocks even you. But neuroscience also shows that even a short pause can help shift control back to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, empathy, and long-term thinking. In essence, pausing allows you to return to yourself. Imagine what would change if you could pause when someone criticizes you, and instead of launching into defense, you took a moment to ask, "What am I really feeling here? Hurt, embarrassed, misunderstood. Imagine pausing when your plans fall apart, and instead of spiraling into frustration, you take a breath and think, what can I control in this situation? That one pause, repeated consistently, can completely rewire how you experience your daily life. Mastering the pause also means recognizing emotional buildup. Emotions that aren't acknowledged will look for an exit, and they often find one in the most inconvenient moments. You might explode at your child for a small mistake, not because of them, but because you haven't processed your own stress or resentment from earlier in the day. The pause gives you the chance to ask, is this emotion about this moment, or am I carrying something from before? That simple reflection can spare you the guilt and damage of misdirected emotion. What makes the pause principle so powerful is that it's always available. No matter how busy, tired, or overwhelmed you are, you can always choose a breath. You can always choose a moment of silence before responding. You can always choose to walk away and return with a clearer mind. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And the beauty of this practice is that it creates ripple effects. When you pause, others begin to pause too. Your calm energy becomes a mirror, inviting others to reflect rather than react. You break cycles of emotional volatility, not just in yourself, but in your relationships, your workplace, your home. You model what it looks like to lead with intention, not impulse. Of course, there will be times when you forget to pause. You'll react too quickly, say too much, or shut down entirely. That's part of being human. But the goal isn't to be flawless. It's to catch yourself a little earlier each time, to shorten the distance between emotional trigger and emotional control, to build enough awareness that even when you slip, you can repair, recalibrate, and return to your center. The pause is the foundation of emotional self-regulation. Without it, all other strategies fall apart. With it, you gain a tool that can transform every interaction, every decision, and every challenge you face. It is not dramatic, but it is revolutionary. It is not loud, but it is powerful. In learning to pause, you are not just managing emotions, you are mastering yourself. Pausing is not retreating, it's reclaiming. In the heat of an emotional moment, pausing feels like doing nothing. But in truth, it's one of the most courageous acts you can take. When your body wants to snap, shout, cry, or withdraw, and you choose stillness, even for a few seconds, you are standing in the space between chaos and clarity. That space, though silent, is alive with possibility. In it, you are no longer controlled by the emotion. You are watching it, holding it, choosing what to do with it. Many people fear the pause because they mistake it for weakness or passivity. They think, if I don't react now, I'm giving up power. I'm letting the other person win. But that's a misunderstanding born from the culture of reactivity. True power isn't loud or immediate. It's deliberate. The most dangerous and effective moves in life are often made with composure, not aggression. When you pause, you are not giving up your voice. You're making sure it speaks wisely. Consider how often reactivity has cost you. A message sent in anger that damaged trust. A decision made in haste that created long-term regret. A conversation that escalated because you couldn't stop yourself in time. These moments don't define who you are, but they do highlight the importance of the pause. They show you that emotional control isn't about living without emotion. It's about learning to engage emotion as a partner, not a master. With practice, the pause becomes instinctive. It becomes part of your emotional rhythm. Instead of instantly replying to that triggering message, you give yourself a few minutes or a few hours. Instead of immediately saying yes out of guilt or pressure, you pause to check in with your boundaries and priorities. You begin to live more intentionally, speaking from reflection rather than reaction. And what once felt like hesitation now becomes wisdom. This shift also helps you gain clarity on what your emotions are really trying to tell you. Sometimes what feels like anger is actually exhaustion. Sometimes your anxiety is just the body's way of telling you that you're overwhelmed or overstimulated. The pause gives you space to ask, what is this really about? That question, simple as it seems, can redirect your entire emotional experience. You begin to separate truth from assumption, need from impulse, insight from noise. The pause is also healing. It interrupts the internal programming that many of us inherited, scripts we didn't choose but still follow. If you grew up in a household where yelling was the norm, where love was withheld during emotional outbursts, or where you weren't allowed to express your feelings, your default reactions may reflect survival, not authenticity. But every time you pause, you rewrite a part of that script. You say, "This is not who I want to be. This is not how I want to live. I choose a different response." You won't always get it right. Some days your emotions will rise faster than your awareness. Some moments will catch you off guard, and the reaction will come before the pause. That's okay. The goal isn't to become an emotionless robot, but to build emotional resilience over time. Every time you catch yourself, whether before or after the reaction, you're growing. You're learning. You're taking one step closer to emotional mastery. The pause also creates room for empathy. When you step back from your own emotion, you create space to see the other person more clearly. You begin to notice their fear, their pain, their own emotional blueprint. And in that moment, you may choose compassion instead of confrontation. That doesn't mean tolerating abuse or disrespect. It means not letting someone else's emotional chaos dictate your own. You become the calm in the storm, not only for yourself, but for others. Eventually, the pause begins to stretch your perception of time itself. Emotional reactivity makes the world feel rushed, chaotic, urgent. But as you learn to respond slowly and deliberately, you start to feel spacious inside. You no longer feel compelled to fix every problem immediately, to defend every comment, to answer every emotion with equal intensity. You learn to sit in discomfort, to trust that not every feeling demands action. And in that stillness, peace finds you. So, how do you make the pause a habit? You begin by noticing. The next time you feel your body tighten, your jaw clench, your fist ball, your heart race, treat it like a signal, not a threat, but a call to awareness. Breathe. Place your hand on your chest. Repeat a grounding word or phrase. "I'm safe," or "This isn't urgent." Step away if you must. Drink water. Look out a window. Give your nervous system permission to settle. Then return, not with control over the situation, but with control over yourself. Over time, this practice will reshape your emotional landscape. You'll feel less like you're being dragged by your emotions and more like you're walking alongside them, hand in hand. You'll begin to notice the power of restraint, not the kind that suppresses, but the kind that liberates. The kind that lets you choose peace, clarity, and intention. This is the heart of the pause principle. To create space in your day-to-day life where wisdom can rise and reaction can rest. In that space, you reclaim your choices. You protect your relationships. You preserve your energy. And you anchor yourself in a version of you that is calm, grounded, and unshakably in control. Let this be your new default. Not reaction, but reflection. Not haste, but awareness. Not noise, but clarity. Because in mastering the pause, you master your life. Chapter 3. Emotional Mastery in Conversations and Conflict. It is easy to feel emotionally balanced when you are alone. In solitude, you can breathe, think, and reflect without interruption. But the true test of emotional control begins the moment you engage with other people, especially when the stakes are high, the emotions are intense, or the conversation becomes difficult. Whether it's a disagreement with a loved one, a confrontation at work, or a heated debate with a friend, conflict challenges you to either rise above your impulses or sink into them. And most of us, without proper emotional tools, default to the latter. Communication is one of the most powerful and emotionally charged aspects of human life. Every word carries weight. Every silence can be interpreted. Every tone of voice, every raised eyebrow, every pause is part of an unspoken language that goes beyond the words exchanged. Emotions often drive this language more than logic does. A simple question can feel like an accusation. A bit of feedback can sound like rejection. An unmet expectation can explode into an argument because one person feels unseen or unheard. The challenge, then, is not to eliminate emotions from your conversations, but to guide them with awareness. Conflict is not the enemy. It is not inherently destructive. In fact, conflict, when handled consciously, can strengthen relationships, clarify boundaries, and bring people closer through shared honesty. What makes conflict dangerous is not the disagreement itself, but the emotional reactions that go unchecked. When anger flares, when egos lock horns, When defensiveness takes over, communication breaks down and all that's left is noise. And once emotions are in the driver's seat, reason often gets tossed out the window. To master your emotions in conversations, especially tense ones, you must begin with presence. Most people listen to respond, not to understand. While the other person is talking, they're already preparing their defense. But emotional mastery calls for deeper listening. Not just hearing the words, but sensing the emotion behind them. What is this person really trying to say? What are they feeling underneath their posture and tone? When you listen with empathy instead of ego, you stop fueling the fire and start dissolving the tension. Presence also means staying grounded in your body during the conversation. When emotions escalate, your body reacts first. Your pulse quickens. Your chest tightens. Your face flushes. Your breath shortens. You may feel the urge to interrupt, to prove a point, to defend yourself instantly. This is where awareness is essential. Take notice of these signs and breathe through them. Anchor yourself in your physical body. The more you stay present with yourself, the more likely you are to respond with clarity instead of emotional combustion. One of the greatest emotional challenges in conversations is criticism. Whether it's justified or not, criticism has a way of hitting our deepest insecurities. You might feel attacked even when the other person is trying to be helpful. You might shut down or lash out. The key to handling criticism is to pause internally and ask, is there truth here I can use, even if the delivery isn't perfect? And if the criticism is unkind or unfair, you can still choose how to respond. You don't have to absorb it. You don't have to retaliate. You can stand your ground with dignity, not aggression. Emotional mastery in conversation also involves knowing your triggers. Certain words, tones, or behaviors might remind you of past wounds or unresolved pain. These triggers can hijack your emotional state in seconds. But the more you know what triggers you, the more prepared you become to manage your response. For example, if being interrupted always makes you feel disrespected, recognize that the intensity of your emotion might be tied to a deeper need to feel heard. When you know the emotional root, you can express your need without escalating the conflict. Setting boundaries is another crucial part of emotional control. People who lack emotional mastery often swing between two extremes, overreacting or staying silent. But neither approach serves you well. Overreacting damages trust and connection. Staying silent breeds resentment and confusion. Boundaries, when expressed calmly and clearly, protect your energy and clarify your limits. Saying, I'm not comfortable with that, or let's take a break and return to this later, is not weakness. It's emotional maturity. There will be moments when, despite your best efforts, the other person remains emotional, aggressive, or unkind. You cannot control how others behave, but you can control what energy you bring into the space. Refusing to match their intensity doesn't mean you're backing down. It means you're refusing to give your power away. You remain anchored, even when others lose their footing. That kind of calm is not just strength, it's influence. Equally important is learning to repair. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you'll always get it right. You'll still say the wrong thing. You'll still react when you wish you hadn't. But what matters most is what you do next. Can you take responsibility for your part without falling into shame or blame? Can you return to the conversation with a clearer heart and a willingness to rebuild? People don't expect perfection. They expect presence, honesty, and effort. Apologies, when sincere, are not signs of weakness, but of confidence in your own growth. In emotionally charged conversations, silence can also be your ally. Not the silent treatment, but intentional pauses, moments where you allow space for things to settle. A deep breath before responding. A few seconds to collect your thoughts. Silence can create space for truth to surface and for tempers to cool. It communicates that you value the outcome more than the need to be right. As you continue to practice emotional mastery in conversations, you begin to notice a shift in your relationships. You're no longer drained by every disagreement. You no longer feel the need to control how others see you. You let people have their opinions without letting those opinions define your worth. You begin to speak with confidence, listen with openness, and navigate conflict without fear. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to trust yourself in any interaction, knowing that your emotions are no longer your captors, but your companions. You'll also find that people begin to feel safer around you. They know you won't explode at the smallest provocation. They trust that you can handle hard truths without withdrawing or attacking. Your calm becomes a model for others, and your relationships begin to deepen. Not because they are conflict-free, but because they are grounded in honesty, resilience, and respect. Mastering your emotions in conversations and conflict doesn't just change how you communicate. It changes who you are. You become someone who doesn't just survive conflict, but transforms it. Someone who creates safety and connection. Someone who leads, not with domination, but with emotional clarity and inner peace. The heart of emotional mastery in conversations lies not in controlling the other person, but in managing the storm within yourself. When tension arises, your instinct may be to protect your pride, defend your beliefs, or prove a point. But this instinct often fuels division, not connection. Emotional mastery invites a deeper question. Not, how do I win this argument? But, how can I preserve this relationship and still honor myself? That shift in intention changes everything. Intentions shape interactions. If you enter a conversation seeking validation or revenge, your emotions will mirror that energy. Defensive, sharp, combative. But if you enter with the intent to understand, to express truthfully, and to grow, your emotions begin to settle, and your voice becomes steady. This doesn't mean you avoid difficult topics or compromise your values. It means you anchor yourself in purpose rather than pride. You lead the conversation, not with dominance, but with direction. Not every conversation will end in agreement, and that's not the goal. Emotional mastery isn't about forcing alignment. It's about creating emotional safety. When people feel safe, they open. When they feel judged or attacked, they close. Even in conflict, you could be the one who makes it safe to disagree, to speak honestly, to be vulnerable. That kind of emotional presence is rare and powerful. A critical aspect of emotional control during conflict is managing your internal narrative. Your brain is always telling you a story. They don't respect me. They're trying to hurt me. This always happens. These stories are shaped by past wounds and old fears, and they often aren't true. If you don't pause to challenge them, they'll take over your emotions and distort the entire conversation. Emotional maturity means learning to ask, is this the story I want to believe right now? Or could there be another way to see this? Sometimes that one internal shift is enough to de-escalate not just the situation, but your entire emotional state. At the same time, it's important to distinguish between emotional self-regulation and emotional suppression. Mastery doesn't mean pretending you're okay when you're not. It doesn't mean becoming so zen that nothing affects you. That's avoidance in disguise. Real mastery is about feeling everything, fully, honestly, and choosing your response anyway. You allow yourself to feel anger, but you don't let it choose your words. You feel hurt, but you don't lash out. You feel frustrated, but you speak with clarity, not cruelty. That's the difference between reacting from your emotions and responding with your emotions in check. This is especially important when dealing with emotionally manipulative people. Not every conflict is healthy. Some conversations are designed to bait you, to make you question yourself, to erode your confidence. Emotional mastery means recognizing when a conversation is no longer about resolution, but about control. In those moments, your best move may not be a calm response. It may be stepping away entirely. Emotional control gives you the discernment to know when to engage, when to set a boundary, and when to walk away in peace. And yet, emotional mastery is not a solo performance. It becomes a gift to everyone you communicate with. When you learn to hold your center in difficult conversations, you model a new way of being. You show others that it's possible to be honest without being harsh, that emotions don't have to explode to be expressed, that you can disagree without disrespect. This has a ripple effect. People begin to lower their defenses. They begin to trust the space you hold. Over time, the emotional climate of your relationships begins to shift, not because others changed, but because you did. In family settings, this is especially transformative. Families often carry years of unspoken emotion, misunderstood intentions, and patterns so deeply ingrained they feel impossible to break. But one person's emotional growth can begin to change the entire system. When you stop reacting in the same predictable way, when you no longer take the bait, no longer respond with anger or guilt, you shift the pattern. The emotional rhythm changes. And while others may resist at first, they will begin to notice that you've become grounded, less volatile, more at peace. That alone can create space for healing. At work, emotional mastery gives you the advantage of clarity in environments that are often competitive, high pressure, and emotionally charged. You become the person who doesn't panic under pressure, who communicates clearly even when others lose their cool. People begin to trust your judgment because your emotions no longer cloud your decisions. You earn respect not by dominating the room, but by demonstrating emotional intelligence, the kind that listens, reflects, and acts with precision. Even in romantic relationships, where emotions are the most raw and vulnerable, mastery becomes a form of emotional intimacy. When you can say, "I feel hurt right now, but want to talk about it calmly," or "I need a moment to gather my thoughts before I respond," you open doors that emotional reactivity slams shut. You make space for both people to be seen and heard. And when both partners commit to this kind of emotional responsibility, the relationship deepens in trust, safety, and lasting connection. Emotional mastery in conversations is about standing in your truth without abandoning your peace. It is about speaking with both strength and softness. It is about knowing that you can express yourself fully without losing yourself in the process. And it is about learning that the strongest voice in any room is not always the loudest, but the one that remains calm, clear, and grounded, no matter how high the tension rises. Chapter 4. Building Emotional Habits for Resilience. Emotional resilience isn't built in one dramatic moment of change. It's cultivated in the quiet, repeated choices you make every single day. The habits that shape your emotional life are often small, almost invisible, but over time they determine whether you bend or break under pressure. Emotional balance is not something you stumble into. It's something you actively nurture, one decision at a time. And this chapter is about helping you craft a life that makes emotional regulation feel less like a daily battle and more like a steady rhythm. Your day begins long before your feet touch the ground in the morning. What you do in the first and last moments of your day has a powerful ripple effect on your mood, mindset, and emotional control. A morning routine that includes even a few quiet minutes of stillness, whether that's journaling, stretching, prayer, or deep breathing, can dramatically shift your mental state for the better. You're not just preparing your body for the day, you're preparing your emotional core. Starting the day with intention grounds you. It creates a protective buffer between you and the inevitable stressors waiting outside your front door. And on the other end of the spectrum, how you end your day is just as important. Taking time to decompress, reflect, or wind down with gratitude creates closure and tells your nervous system it's safe to rest. It's in these bookends of your day, morning and night, that emotional resilience quietly takes root. Gratitude may sound like a cliche, but it is one of the most powerful emotional recalibration tools available. When you train your mind to focus on what is working, on what you still have, on who still loves you, on what beauty still exists, you train your nervous system to feel safer, calmer, and more hopeful. Practicing gratitude daily rewires your brain to expect goodness, even when life feels uncertain. Mindfulness works hand in hand with gratitude. It teaches you to observe your emotions without being swept away by them. It teaches you presence, which is the antidote to anxiety about the future or guilt about the past. And if there's one habit often ignored, but critical to emotional balance, it's sleep. Sleep is not a luxury. It's emotional medicine. Lack of sleep erodes your patience, magnifies emotional reactions, and weakens your self-regulation muscle. You cannot hope to be emotionally grounded while running on an exhausted brain. When sleep becomes sacred, emotional clarity follows. Physical health and emotional health are deeply intertwined. The way you eat, move, and treat your body directly impacts your emotional state. Nutrient-rich foods fuel not only your muscles, but your brain chemistry. Regular movement, especially cardiovascular activity, increases endorphins and reduces stress hormones. Hormonal balance, especially for women navigating cycles or men dealing with testosterone shifts, plays a huge role in mood regulation. If your body is out of sync, your emotions will often be out of sync too. Emotional strength isn't just about thinking better. It's also about treating your body better. A well-cared-for body gives rise to a well-regulated emotional life. We also live in a digital world that constantly tugs at our emotional energy. Social media, news, and endless notifications can be hidden emotional triggers that slowly chip away at your stability. One negative headline, one comparison post, one thread of conflict in the comment section, and suddenly, your mood has shifted and you don't even know why. Emotional resilience requires digital discipline. You must be aware of what you're consuming and how often. Curate your digital spaces with care. Choose content that lifts you rather than drains you. Set boundaries with your phone so it doesn't own your attention. The fewer emotional ambushes you allow into your day, the stronger you remain. Building emotional resilience isn't just about big changes. It's about what you do in the smallest, most forgettable moments. These are the micro moments that shape your emotional life. The breath you take before answering a text that upset you, the decision to pause before reacting to criticism, the walk you take after a tough meeting, the smile you offer to a stranger when you're tempted to withdraw. These seemingly minor choices create emotional muscle memory. They teach your mind and body that you are in control, even when circumstances aren't. When you begin to build your life around these quiet habits, aligned mornings, grateful evenings, mindful eating, conscious movement, limited digital noise, and emotionally aware micro moments, you shift from being emotionally reactive to being emotionally anchored. You stop depending on motivation or willpower to stay calm, and instead rely on structure and rhythm. Emotional balance becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural state. Resilience, then, is not a destination. It's a rhythm you keep, a lifestyle you live, a quiet strength you carry, day after day. Emotional habits, like any other kind of habit, are built not on intensity, but on consistency. What makes them powerful is not how dramatic they feel, but how quietly they show up in the background of your life and reshape the way you experience the world. These habits become your internal scaffolding, the invisible framework that helps you stay grounded in chaos, soft in conflict, and clear even when life is anything but. One of the core principles of emotional resilience is self-awareness, not in a vague, philosophical sense, but in a very practical, daily sense. Self-awareness means recognizing your own emotional patterns and developing the tools to intervene early. When you feel yourself slipping into old reactions, whether it's shutting down, lashing out, or spiraling into anxiety, having emotionally intelligent habits gives you an anchor. You begin to catch the shift before it turns into a storm. You start naming your feelings instead of becoming them. Over time, you stop being a passive receiver of emotions and start becoming an active participant in shaping how you feel. This level of emotional clarity doesn't come from occasional breakthroughs. It comes from daily rituals. It's found in waking up 5 minutes earlier to ground your thoughts. It's found in choosing to hydrate before reaching for caffeine, in pausing to stretch when you feel tension rising in your chest, and walking away from the screen when you sense your mind spiraling. These moments may feel small and insignificant in isolation, but they compound. They form a lifestyle where emotional regulation is no longer a reaction to crisis. It becomes a way of being. A powerful yet underrated emotional habit is rest. Not just physical rest, but mental rest. We live in a world where stimulation is constant and silence is rare. But the brain, like the body, needs time to process, sort, and recover. Moments of silence, like stepping outside without your phone, taking a walk without music, or sitting in stillness before bed, act as emotional detox. They give your brain the margin it needs to file away emotional clutter and make sense of your inner world. In that space, you begin to reconnect with yourself, your values, and your truth. Boundaries are another emotional habit that builds resilience, and they don't always look like hard conversations. Sometimes they look like closing your laptop at a reasonable hour. Sometimes they look like declining an invitation that you know will leave you drained. Sometimes they're about not checking your phone until after your morning routine is complete. Boundaries are not selfish. They're self-preserving. They guard your emotional reserves and prevent burnout. They allow you to show up with your full self where you're truly needed instead of spreading yourself thin, trying to be everywhere for everyone. There is also immense value in emotionally intelligent reflection. This is not the same as ruminating or overthinking. It is the habit of checking in with yourself in an honest but gentle way. You ask questions like, what am I feeling and why? Or what did I need in that moment that I didn't get? Or what can I learn from how I reacted today? These internal dialogues help you become more emotionally flexible. You begin to hold space for your own complexity without judgment. You allow yourself to feel without being swallowed by the feeling. This builds emotional maturity, which is the bedrock of resilience. Importantly, resilience doesn't mean you never feel overwhelmed. It means you have a reliable system of returning to emotional baseline when you do. It means you can experience deep frustration and still maintain your perspective. You can encounter fear, but not let it govern your decisions. You can feel grief and still take care of your basic needs. These are not traits you're born with. They are skills you practice through daily habits. In the quiet moments between tasks, in the in-between of obligations, in the transitions from one emotion to the next, this is where resilience is formed. Every time you choose to pause instead of panic, breathe instead of break down, or notice instead of numb out, you are wiring your brain for stability. Every gentle act of care toward your body, your mind, your heart, sends a message to your nervous system. You are safe. You can handle this. Chapter 5. Becoming the emotionally grounded version of you. Becoming the emotionally grounded version of yourself is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming deeply present. It's about knowing how to navigate your emotional world without losing yourself in it. At the heart of emotional intelligence lies this understanding. Emotions are messengers, not dictators. They are signals, not sentences. They deserve attention, but they do not deserve control. Many people mistake emotional grounding for emotional suppression. But to suppress is to silence. And what you silence does not disappear. It just finds other ways to surface, often more chaotically. Emotional intelligence, by contrast, is the skill of listening without being led, feeling without being flooded, and expressing without exploding. It is the art of allowing space for every emotion while choosing carefully how to respond. On days when everything feels like too much, when anxiety hums beneath your skin or sadness lingers like a cloud, having emotional tools you can turn to is a game changer. These aren't elaborate fixes. They're small, accessible practices that give your nervous system relief. It could be as simple as naming what you're feeling out loud, journaling a few lines to clear mental clutter, or placing a hand over your chest and reminding yourself, this is hard, but I'm safe. These micro habits of care don't erase the emotion, but they reduce the overwhelm. You begin to develop the inner resilience that says, I can stay with myself, even in discomfort. Over time, you become your own emotional coach. You learn to meet yourself in the middle of a storm instead of abandoning yourself to it. This self-coaching is not about giving yourself a motivational speech when you're down. It's about holding space for your truth, then gently guiding yourself back to center. It's asking yourself helpful questions. What do I need right now? What story am I telling myself? Is this emotion rooted in the present, or is it echoing the past? These questions shift your emotional state from reactivity to reflection. That shift is where grounding begins. Another essential part of becoming emotionally grounded is how you relate to others emotionally. Emotional intelligence is not just an inward-facing skill. It affects how you move through your relationships. Often, we hope others will magically understand our emotional boundaries and inner needs. But part of being grounded is learning to teach emotional responsibility by example. This doesn't mean lecturing people or correcting their every emotional misstep. It means modeling self-awareness. It means expressing your needs without shame. It means being the calm in a room, not because you're unaffected, but because you've learned to respond instead of react. When you interact with someone who constantly dumps their emotions onto others, you don't have to absorb their storm. You can acknowledge their pain without abandoning your peace. You can say, I care about you, and I also need a moment to process, or let's take a breath and talk about this calmly. These are subtle but powerful ways to redirect emotional energy toward clarity and mutual respect. You're not only protecting your peace, You're planting seeds of emotional awareness in the people around you. A defining trait of the emotionally grounded self is a growth mindset. You do not view setbacks as confirmation that you're broken. You see them as opportunities to understand yourself better. The emotionally grounded person does not spiral into shame when they make a mistake. They pause. They ask, what can I learn from this? How did I respond? And what could I do differently next time? This mindset helps you build emotional muscle, not through avoidance, but through gentle accountability. Emotional spiraling happens when we stack thoughts on top of emotions until they feel too heavy to hold. But when you stay grounded, you learn to hold just one thing at a time, one emotion, one response, one lesson. And with practice, the moments that used to break you become the moments that remake you. You stop fearing emotional discomfort because you trust your ability to move through it. Chaos doesn't always knock before it enters. Life can turn upside down in a day, and being emotionally grounded is what allows you to remain steady in the whirlwind. It's not about being unaffected. It's about being anchored. When your inner world is anchored, the external world can swirl without pulling you under. You remain soft, but not fragile. You are open, but not exposed. You are kind, but not consumed. That is the strength of the emotionally intelligent self. Groundedness is a quiet power. It's what allows you to listen to criticism without internalizing it. It's what keeps you from taking everything personally. It's what lets you remain compassionate with others while staying loyal to yourself. And it is not something you arrive at in one grand transformation. It is something you build, breath by breath, choice by choice, day after day. To become the emotionally grounded version of you is to become someone who does not wait for the world to be calm before feeling peace. You learn to carry calmness with you. You learn to become your own safe place. And in doing so, you not only change how you feel, you change how you live, how you love, and how you lead. As you journey further into emotional mastery, one essential truth becomes undeniable. Becoming emotionally grounded is not a one-time achievement, but a way of life. It's the conscious decision, repeated day after day, to stay centered even when life is messy, uncertain, or overwhelming. Emotional groundedness is like building a home within yourself, a place no storm can destroy. You carry this home into every room, every conversation, and every challenge. One of the pillars of this emotional home is the ability to self-coach. When you hit a rough day, and you need tools that don't rely on someone else showing up for you first. Maybe your friends are busy. Maybe your partner doesn't understand. Maybe you're the one who needs to lead the way emotionally. Self-coaching is a powerful, quiet form of self-leadership. It involves asking yourself, what am I really feeling right now? What thought is fueling this emotion? Is it true? Is it helpful? What do I want to choose instead? This practice turns moments of despair into opportunities for alignment. It helps you shift from spiraling into self-awareness. But emotional mastery is not a solitary process. As you become more emotionally responsible, you'll begin to notice the emotional patterns of others more clearly. While it's tempting to correct or rescue people, true emotional leadership means modeling balance without preaching. People are more likely to change when they see peace in you, not when they feel pressure from you. Your calm becomes contagious. Your self-respect invites others to honor their own. You create space for healthier dynamics, not by controlling others, but by standing firm in your own clarity. There will be setbacks, moments when old habits sneak back in, when you lose your temper or freeze in anxiety or fall back into emotional overthinking. But those moments don't erase your growth. They reveal where growth still lives. A growth mindset sees setbacks as signals, not as failures. It says, this happened, but what can I learn from it? How can I strengthen myself for next time? With every stumble, you are invited not to give up, but to go deeper. Each emotional storm is a lesson in disguise, asking, will you return to yourself now? And then there's the real test, staying grounded in environments that aren't. Maybe it's a high-pressure job, a volatile home, or a society that thrives on chaos and outrage. Groundedness doesn't mean ignoring the world's noise. It means knowing where you end and the world begins. It's about protecting your internal peace, like sacred ground. You breathe before reacting. You pause before engaging. You disconnect to reconnect. You choose what energy gets to live inside of you. This doesn't make you passive or indifferent. It makes you powerful. Becoming the emotionally grounded version of yourself is about identity. It's not just about what you do. It's about who you become. You are someone who listens deeply, responds wisely, and doesn't let fleeting emotions define your character. You are someone who can walk into the fire and not lose their center. And that kind of strength doesn't just change your life. It transforms everyone and everything around you.